Welcome everybody. I'm Liz Millington, a Volunteers Program Coordinator with the Adelaide Mount Lofty Range NRM Board. And the idea behind these workshops is to make your job easier to get the grants that you deserve to do the work that you've been doing for so long. So I think you'll find it a very a productive sort of session. I want to just first acknowledge that we are meeting here on Kaurna land, and that culture is still very important to the Kaurna people, as is this land. We have some very experienced presenters today. We've got Jill Peacey from DENA's NRM Investment Unit, Paul Francis, Australian Government facilitator that helps with the Caring for Our Country variety of grants, Liz Matthews, also from the DENA Investment Unit. Myself, I'm involved with the small grant scheme that the NRM Board offers. There you go, and starting off with Paul.
Thanks Liz, thanks for the welcome. I'm Paul Francis, I'm with the Department of Sustainability, Environment, Water, Population and Communities for the Federal Government, and I'm part of a joint team, so I'm also with Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry. Again, hi my colleagues here as well, and we're facilitators in large part of the Caring for Our Country program, but we look at all of the funding in the NRM area to provide advice and support people chasing that sort of funding. I think the first thing we'd be saying when you're thinking about putting together a project, the key thing is to be focused on the project, not the money. And that seems fairly straightforward, but what often we see is we announce a funding program and then we get phone calls from people saying, I hear you've got money, what have we got to do to get it? And it's not a great place to be starting from. What we'd be suggesting is, if you're clear about what you're doing, if you're working with a group, you generally are, if you're working on a park or the like, you've got some sense of what it is you want to achieve. And if you can be clear about that, about what you need to do that project, the resources you need, how much time, do you need permits or approvals or those, if you're across all of those things, when it comes time that there's a funding program, you can see where the alignment is, rather than taking the approach of coming in from, there's money, what have I got to do? And certainly in terms of putting together a proposal, if you're already clear on it before a funding opportunity comes along, it's a lot easier to make those things fit together. Also makes it easier for you to work out whether or not there's actually a genuine alignment, because if it's a very competitive process and your project only aligns in part with the objectives of the funding program, you have to question how much work you want to put into this in a competitive environment. And the way to find out a lot of this stuff is to talk to people. So that's talk to people who may have put in proposals in your field. So other parks groups, have they been successful chasing groups, chasing funding? There'll be facilitators with regional boards. There'll be staff with the organisations that you may have contacts with. There'll be facilitators like Ben and myself, whose job is just basically to help people access their programs and then manage them once you've got the process. And there are, most funding programs will have a contact person, a line or whatever, so I provide information, but there'll be people to talk to. And can't stress enough, talking to people makes a real difference. If you've got an idea but you're not sure how it lines up with the program, talk to somebody. Don't make assumptions about what's in and out. Quite often we write something and it's literally in black and white. It looks like you don't fit. So we'll say things like, we don't fund killing rabbits and spraying weeds. We're not interested in that thing, because we get people asking for money for that all the time. But if someone came to us and said, in our park we've got an endangered species, you know, the lesser spotted daisy or whatever it is, this is really important to us and it's being threatened, and we want to do something about it, and what we're going to do is spray weeds and kill rabbits, we go, that's great. Same project, different approach. And it's really important that you give thought to what it is we're looking for to make our decisions. And that's what today is all about. The stuff about approvals, permits and all the like, the issue with this is quite often the funding programs are, the period they're open to make an application is quite short. And if you've got a project that, say in the Adelaide Hills, is going to involve some water affecting activity, you will need a permit to do that. And you need to have talked to people and have some sense of how long will it take us to get this. And funding programs operate differently. So if you're dealing with a Commonwealth program, with ours generally, we won't ask for anything up front. You'll say, yes, I will have the necessary approvals and permits, landholder permissions, etc. And if you're successful, we'll expect you to provide those before we sign off on the contract. For the state ones, I think, Jill, for a number of things, you'll be asking for things like landholder permissions, prior to, you have to have a letter with your application. So you need to know which bits you need and how long it will take to get them if you needed to. Of course, if we have a new program, you won't know what we want until we put it out there, and you'll only have 6 or 8 weeks to do that. But if you think there's going to be a problem with a permit, you talk to somebody. How do I address this? Can I put something that says we've started the process, and if we're successful, a permit will be available in 3 months? Then we can take it into consideration when we're assessing the project. Lots of different kinds of grant funding out there. If you're working early, if you've done your homework, if you've prepared your project, you know what you want to achieve, then you can be more open to what is going on at the time rather than actually seeing an opportunity and then trying to fit into it. So there are lots of people out there that do funding, but it takes time to surf around the net, talk to people, find out who got funding for what. Where do I look? And we've got a resource for that as well. It gives a whole load of places you can go looking for that. But you have the philanthropic organisations like the Myer Foundation and the like. They may be open a lot of the time. They'll take applications at any time. Corporates like Toyota and that want to put money into green projects. You need to think about, does my project fit with the scale they're operating at? Do they have a local agent in South Australia that's actually taking a lead with these sorts of things? The non-government organisations, often there's a fair bit of money that they're pulling from somewhere else that they're then using to redistribute. So Landcare, Greening Australia, places like that will be running programs. And of course Woolies, Mitre 10, those sorts of things have small programs as well that go along. And sometimes the things you're looking for won't necessarily be in the areas you would think to look. Like we had a Landcare group over on York Peninsula that wanted chainsaws. We don't fund those sorts of purchases through our programs, but somehow they got onto SGIC community grants and talked about an op health and safety issue and said, we have people climbing up ladders to cut branches off trees with chainsaws. And they got a grant for extender poles for the chainsaws and the like and bought them all through that. Nothing to do with Landcare or NRM. So go and look somewhere else for that money. And again, those are the sorts of things we can help you go looking for if that's what you're after. And then of course the primary ones in our field, the Australian Government, the State Government and the NRM boards are all putting money out. We have a range of programs that are running regularly. I imagine most of you know something or some of them. And it's just a matter of checking in when we've got the next round out. So often that means getting on an email list and making sure those organisations are letting you know when they've got anything coming. So I'll send out a newsletter and say in the next round of Landcare funding or regional small grants or Caring for a Country program, you'll get that information in updates all the time from them. So you go to the sites, you register for an email. Each of the funders will have different needs in terms of what they need from you in their application, and this becomes one of the critical bits for putting together your applications. You've got to look at each funding program separately. It's not a matter of just changing the keywords from this application and then just pop it in for the next one and hope that it goes okay. You need to look carefully at what the criteria are, what we will be looking for in the program. Some programs will require matching funding or co-contributions. You need to make sure that you're going to be able to match them. Some will need approvals and the like. Some will require that they have supporting letters, those sorts of things. You need to go through all of those bits and pieces, check what's required, and then provide those in there. If you're not sure, that's the time to be talking to somebody. And as I said, you talk to the funding bodies, you talk to the facilitators you've got in your region, and you talk to regional NRM staff, and you should be able to get some sense of what's going on. And I think most of us would be honest enough with you to say whether you're a reasonable match for the funding program or you're actually investing time in something that's not got much chance of getting up. We won't say, you can't apply for that, but we'll generally be pretty straight about it's not a good match. If it's not a good match, you can have a look at what they've funded previously. So nearly all programs will have a list of all the projects that have been successful before. And you can get a sense of what sort of things they do like to fund, the sort of amount of money they'd like to invest. So we'll have programs that say you can get up to $50,000. Have a look at their past track record of what they've funded. And if you can't find any projects over $30,000, pretty brave to put something in at 50 and expect it to be successful. Now you can have a talk to them and say, how come you don't fund projects at the top end of the thing? It's like, well, we want to spread the money further. We don't do too many bigger projects and you have to be exceptional and you have to do this, this and this, and you go, okay, we can or can't match that. I can make a call on whether I should put an application of that size. So you can learn a lot from what funding bodies have funded before.